Shit My Pastor Said. My name is Kris Sauter. My brother Dano and I, we host this podcast. In our previous episode, we started recording, and a couple minutes into it, my brother said, holy shit, there was a shooting that just happened in Minneapolis. And that is about the extent at the time of what we knew. We didn't know what happened. We didn't know Renee Good's name. And now it's been a week and just a couple minutes after from when she was executed by our government. And there's a lot of feelings that we have, obviously. And so we thought we would just get right into it, where we share. Dano lives in Minneapolis, sharing how he's doing. I share a little bit. I'm in Duluth, Minnesota, so 2 hours away. But there's a lot of complicated, nuanced yeah, there's a lot. And so we talk a little bit about where we're at. We talk on former versions of ourselves as evangelical pastors. How might have we responded? Not how we wish we would have responded, but how have we responded? And give some context of why pastors and churches are saying and doing, and really a lack of saying and doing anything. And what is the reason behind that? And then we end with things and practices that we are doing that help bring us connectedness, alignment, and grounding. So we hope you enjoy it. Again, if there's things you have questions or things you want to offer or resources or ways people can get better connected while this is all happening, you can go to shitmypastorsaid.com and you can engage and interact with all of us there. Thanks, friends. All right, we are back to Shit My Pastor Said. And Dano, why don't you share with us about what you're feeling?
So, a week ago and 3 minutes, I think, 9:37, in Minneapolis, Renee Good was shot in the face 3 times. And it has been a crazy week in America and certainly in Minneapolis. From my experience, I instantly felt a response in my body, in my, my emotions. It instantly brought me back to the aftermath of the murder of George Floyd. I live across the street from it's not a police station, but it's a police headquarters. And they put fixed positions on their roof with sandbags and snipers. They patrolled the block around their premises with long rifles. Anyway, so there was just like this response of like, oh my God. Seeing a militarized agent with a long rifle in your neighborhood and in your city is not good. I remember being in Turkey and seeing just a military officer with like a huge machine gun. It's like, oh my God, that's like, that's an army agent, right? That's a GI fucking Joe right in front of me. And just like that just a social comfort level just is gone at that point. And that's been this whole week of driving my daughter to daycare, to preschool, and passing an SUV full of dudes with body armor and masks on their face. It's like, oh my God, there's ICE on their way to do something. Seeing that every day this week. And then yesterday, driving past a gas station that they just like took over. They cut off all the exits. There was probably 10, 12 agents. They stood at the doors of the gas station, searching in there, arresting people. And I have my kid in the back seat and I'm watching this happen, half a mile from my house. And you just, I don't know, it's fight or flight. And you just like, I can't help but just to say like, you just make like a noise of exhale, just like, you know, and your daughter is sitting back there like, what's up? What's happening? Bing, 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 bing. And it's just such a truly helpless emotion of just like all these, what's like adrenaline coursing through my veins and, you know, and still having to be a dad and a partner and, yeah. And it takes everything in me not to like let that out in the wrong way when your kid is asking for the same thing 1,000. It's like, you still have to be a good person. You still have to like respond to your loving child that's being annoying in a way that is the right way to do it instead of just snapping, you know? And that's been like the micro struggles of my week is just like, how do I breathe? How do I still not snap at my kids when I'm feeling these crazy swings? Because just like everybody else, I'm still watching the same videos as you, and I'm still seeing, you know, the things on Facebook of, it's just what, but seeing it with my own eyes is, it's a new feeling. It's a new level of just like, God damn, what's happening? What is happening? I said this before the recording, but seeing it with my own eyes, seeing the videos, and then seeing the dismissal from, you know, the people that could be controlling this, saying like, they can do whatever they want. Like, that's such an equation of just like, oh, so like they can smash my window in a heartbeat, and they can drag me out in front of my kids and leave them there in a car left in the middle of the street. Like, that's what's truly helpless to me. And I know I'm kind of rambling, but like, when they have immunity and they already have a tough guy attitude, it's like, well, then we're fucked. Then like, I mean, maybe not, but like, oh, okay. So like, there's nothing protecting me. And that's how I feel. Not my whiteness, not my maleness, not my parent card, nothing, you know, like everything's on the table and none of it's good. And I know it's worse for a lot of other people, but it feels pretty bad for everybody right now in my community.
And I think I keep getting surprised at what I feel of my ignorance or my, ignorance. I have an idea of, oh, if the police or immigration or IHS or whoever it is, they come in, I'm like, oh, they're going to be professionals. This is a very white male response, right? Of anyone who's going to be moving with that amount of force and that amount of money and that amount of, in my mind, oversight, accountability, it's going to be with professionalism, civility, having the public interest, training. And then when it's like, oh, they had 47 days of training and they have immunity, they have the full backing of the administration and the White House. It just feels, and again, I'm in Duluth, so I haven't seen any ICE agents yet. And there's reports that they're here. I haven't seen them. So I feel like my feelings of being terrified and afraid, I have no idea what it'd feel like when I actually see them on the street, or if they're hurting my neighbor, or if they're saying, fuck you to my 20-year-old kid, right? I have no idea what I feel because even the things I projected or I thought I'd feel have gone out the window. So it just feels, it feels like everybody is making it up as they go along. And that is fucking scary because there is no order. At least there's the perception of order when I'm dealing with different things when it comes to the police in Duluth or in Esco. This just feels like the untouchables. It's fucking insane.
Yeah, like you said, like that civility. I mean, I learned this from you. I learned this from you and just being an adult. And I really love operating in the ability to be like, you know, like whatever. A property manager, when I was a mover, there'd be like property managers. And I love it when you can be like, whoa, 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 whoa. You can't talk to me like that. Talk to me like a fucking adult, all right? Let's start over. And some of that's probably white male privilege, but like,
absolutely.
And then it resets because like, oh, we have to be civil, and they're right, you know, like, or you know, whatever. Like, let me talk to the manager. You can't just treat us like sway, like,
yeah.
But all that's gone. Like, there's no civil contract that's going to save us from that at this. And honestly, I think law enforcement probably has had that privilege for a lot longer than I like to
Way longer.
think about.
But even with that, of like, it's all gone out the window. There's still a lot of voices like Frank and Graham, which we'll get to later, right? Who they're saying, you just have to comply. You just have to obey. All comes from people who never have to comply and never have to obey, right? It's just
exactly.
unchecked male white privilege. And that I'm a recipient of. So when that thread gets pulled, then it's like, oh, so I still remember, I don't remember what shooting, but I remember reading, and it said, if it can happen there, it can happen here. And like little 30-year-old Kris is like, no, like only other cities have these kind of problems. It was like when our dad got cancer. It's like, fuck, no, my dad doesn't get cancer. Your dad gets cancer, not my dad.
Right.
And so when those things become realities, we keep seeing scared. It's true, but it's disorientating, because what we believed as a social construct, and it's still a construct, right, of what we believe to be universal truths or whatever it might be, and those get thrown out. It feels very unsettling is too kind of a term. Just it feels upside down,
right.
and I don't know where we're gonna land. That's also the scary thing. Like my one of my kids, we were talking about this, and he said, "Dad, I know I don't have to be afraid," because we were talking about privilege. He's like, "But like, I'm afraid. So I know I'm not supposed to be afraid, but I'm like afraid." And it was like this awakening. You could see like light bulbs turning on of like, oh, maybe things aren't always what I thought they were. And it breaks my heart as a father.
Yeah.
Like,
dude, when I told you this, but like, I think it's going to go down as one of the most intense moments of my relationship with my kids. But when I told them, probably like a day or two later, about the shooting of Renee Good, and they're 10 and 7, the two older ones, and I said it into, whatever. I communicated in a way that was thoughtful and, but then right away, the 10-year-old's like, do I need to go lock the door? I'm going to go lock the front door, because he was just instantly like, oh shit, like something that happened in our city, that means like it can happen to me, like instantaneously. I just like slumped. I'm like, fuck. Like, he's growing up in a different world than I grew up in.
Yep.
And that was intense.
It's intense, and it's there's still this need of like, we feel we can be I'll speak for myself. There's things I think I can protect my kids from or people from if I just operated in a perfect position. Like, I can shield bad things from my kids if I'm a good parent. And then so when I can't shield my kids or I can't protect my kids from being bullied or whatever it might be, raising a daughter, right? I want to protect her from the bullshit, misogyny and sexism, and I can't. So then I feel like I'm a bad parent. But like, being a responsible, for me, dad, is I have to be in the moment with the kids, because where else are they going to learn how to respond to violence and trauma and blown expectations and beliefs being suspended, right? It's where they should. It's just we want something different for our kids, and this is the reality now. Like, I don't know. We don't have to get dystopian, but like, is it going to get better? I don't even know what better would mean. I don't even know what does better look like other than justice. And how do you bring justice to an organization or department that dismisses any idea of justice that doesn't fall in with their definition? But we can't put the shit back in the bag, right? It's already out there.
Yeah, and it's one of those true fucked up realities of like, they want us to not intervene. And what they really want us, they don't want us to follow the law. They want us to ignore everything that's happening.
Yeah.
So that they can do more of what they want. I just feel like the bad guys are going to win. That's how I just feel. And that sucks to feel that. Because the shit's out of the bag and I don't know where we go.
Yeah, that gets me thinking, Dano, thanks for sharing, we were part of, fairly larger evangelical churches that we are pastoring in that have a history with some social justice events that happened in the 60s and 70s with the Jesus People movement. And it had like these rumblings of being forward-facing progressive and would throw around taglines like social justice. And so like maybe we could talk a little bit on if we were still in those systems, or better, former versions of ourselves that we still can find rumblings of. I can still hear those haunting voices that even like come and shame me to this day. Like if I was a good pastor, I would. So maybe we could spend a little time on that give some context to the people who are listening of why, maybe some reasons why evangelical churches are doing things, and probably even more importantly, not doing things. Does that make sense?
Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think something I've learned to this point since then, being a pastor, is even if your evangelical church feels like it's forward-facing progressive, there's some strong powerhouse pillars in those churches and in those denominations that are the most conservative people you'll ever meet in your life.
Yes.
Does that make sense? And so like, that was always so, like, one example is I had been like truly pastoring as best of my ability this individual who was having a very hard time in her life. She was trans, about to transition fully, had a lot of things going on besides that and besides what she had to deal with in that, area. But she like was coming to church, doing all these great stuff, wanted to get baptized. And I'm like, no brainer, of course. Like, we're going to baptize you. That's like the whole point of this place. And then I had to sit down with the senior pastor with her, or he had to convince me or, tell me what's going to happen. And it all came down to, we don't want to piss off these three people. Two of them are on the board or whatever it was, because they're going to make a huge stink of this if we do this. And it was like, I think I said this on the pod, it was like the beginning of the end for me. Like, I don't think this is what I think it is. So all that to say, when push comes to shove, what a church is going to do is going to be heavily influenced by very conservative voices that still have a lot of power and holding a lot of the strings.
Yeah. And so for both of us, we are trained in this. And I'd say there's a lot of different names for this. So this is just a name that we, or I heard, that former versions of Kris loved this topic. I even did I don't know if I ever told you this. I did a whole workshop exactly on this idea. I'm embarrassed about it, but that's okay. It's the whole concept of the radical middle. And the radical middle comes out of this idea in this movement was, well, we want to take the best of mainline churches, right? Which but they would deem those aren't spirit-filled churches. So they take the Bible seriously, this is Rich Nathan. And actually, I think it was Ken, too. Ken, Letter to My Congregation. Wilson. I think Ken Wilson did Empowered Evangelicals with him, actually.
Yeah, he did.
Oh, way to go. And Ken's a friend of mine now. He's great. But so the one side would be the mainline churches that take the Bible seriously, and the other side would be the charismatic Pentecostals that lean into the gifts of the Spirit, is what they'd call it. And so this denomination said, well, we don't want to be labeled by any of those. We want to be right down the middle. We want to fully believe the Bible, be inspired by the Bible, and then operate in the gifts, which in theory is a great idea, right? And this is a concept of using language to really disguise all the shitty things that are behind it. Because it's easy to understand. It's a concept you can visualize of we're not one, we're something completely different, which evangelicals love the idea that we can transcend from previous traumas, previous things that didn't work, previous institutions that couldn't bring justice. They really do believe, which is a fucking great feeling of thinking we have the truth to transform the world. So if you really do believe that, you can convince yourself on anything. But the bullshit of the radical middle is that you never take a stance. You never take a stance unless it benefits you directly. So the idea of that an evangelical church, or even just, and we can define churches like, because there's a lot of churches doing some fucking great work, right? And a majority of them are mainline churches because they're badass and they've been doing this for generations. They've been leading this cause. But evangelical churches won't get out and lead on something. They'll use words like, hey, we really just need to come together. We need to pray. We really just need to seek God's face right now. We just really need the kingdom to come. Like Franklin Graham had a... Did you get that picture I sent you of him and that other dude? And they look pissed off. And it says, like, time to pray. And I'm like, oh.
Tough lawyers.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I thought. Tough lawyers. You better be scared shitless, Satan. Right? You better be scared shitless, you protesters, because our God. And so it is a form and a sense of entitlement and privilege, and 1,000% patriarchy and whiteness, of being able to have the audacity of saying, well, we just need to pray. We don't need to take a stance. We don't need to get involved in protesting or doing these things, because what we need to do is the main and the plain. I mean, you can call it, there's so many different words. We just need to focus on Jesus, right? We just really need to seek God. Those are all bullshit ways of taking any kind of agency you might have to make a difference, to be a part of a solution, instead just by pulling back and saying, well, if we just focus on Jesus, everything's going to be okay, is not true.
Yeah.
Because if prayer worked in the way that they say it, right? If everyone got together to pray at a specific time, it's going to do what? What is the desired outcome of Franklin Graham wanting to have organized prayer?
Right.
Because he already put out a statement just a little while ago, right? Saying we should be praying for Renee Good's family and her kids, but she got shot because she didn't comply. You have to obey. So then, is what we're praying for is that people will just obey the police or obey ICE agents or obey administration, obey the government? Because then we're praying for compliance. That's not a supernatural act. That is a fall in line and listen to the violence. Fall in line and listen to the voice. And don't question. Which, Dano, I know, when we didn't talk about this earlier, we were absolutely trained on how to do that. How to not answer people's questions and concerns about queer people, about what we're doing with people of color and marginalized people, of how we're using the church's resources or money, right, is going to salaries before anything else. Mm-hmm. So when you live in that world of saying the word Jesus or kingdom or the radical middle is just a way of never tell people what you really believe. Never take a side, because whiteness always benefits from silence. Whiteness always benefits when you just keep things status quo. Even the term whiteness does not highlight an ethnicity or a people group. It lumps all of us in together of saying, when we all operate under this and we all believe it to be true, we continue to win. And evangelicalism, I would say, is all about winning guys in spirituality. It's all about ego. It's all about how do we look like we are on top of the mountain. Because if they really if Franklin Graham, I don't want to keep bringing him up, if evangelical leaders really did believe that prayer worked, why would we have to promote it? Why would they have to go and why couldn't they then use their prayer to bring hope for hungry kids in the schools.
Right.
It is virtue
Well,
signaling.
his prayer thing too. Yeah, virtue signaling, because like it was all about like we are gonna seek forgiveness from God for our nation's sins because there's so much sins in our country and in our streets. And it's just like, okay, like, like even on its face, like, well, what the fuck does that even? What are you talking about?
What,
and what does that do?
And what sin are you talking about? So if we eradicated what would be the sin they have of non-compliance? If you eradicate that quote unquote sin, or even take of when we were growing up of homosexuality and America has condoned it. What about capitalism? What about greed? Right? Like, what about violence? It's the idea of even the radical middle. We can even blame things that you can never blame. You just put, we're a country that has sinned. Okay, what does repentance look like then? Right? Do we give the land back then, guys? Like,
yeah, they're like, whoa.
It pisses me off because I even had a conversation with a local pastor here in Duluth, and again, forward-facing progressive, very active for marginalized people when it comes to racism and institutional and structural racism. They're excellent at that. But when we start talking about trans rights, which I just thought was like a natural, like, let's have liberation for all, not just some. And they were like, whoa, Kris, I don't know if I can go there. And they told me a story of how they're like, can we really believe people when they say they want to be a different gender? I think that's toxic, Kris. I think they're sick. And I'm like, it was like 30 seconds after this whole long conversation that I was vibing with of like, hey, liberation's liberation, man. And they're like, it has to stop. Why? Because it doesn't benefit them. Right? It doesn't benefit them as a heterosexual pastor. And so when I think of churches or leaders or pastors or clergy who are doing sacred, holy work, they're clergy people that no one's ever heard of. Because they're just doing the work. They don't need to get up there trying to manage the anger from the white people, especially white men in their church. Because that's I still remember when we first planted, and I felt like, can we talk about that? Because I could hear the voice, I shouldn't say their names, I could hear the voices of the people in our church. The three biggest givers were white men who were very vocal in their support of our church, and anytime I veered from that, they were very vocal about their lack of support of the church. And it's
funny how the three biggest givers seem to have a lot of airtime all of a sudden when there's some controversy about questioning their whiteness, questioning their whatever.
Well, I could
because that was used against me multiple times.
Well, think about this: in the denomination I worked for, when the movement. Thank you. Bullshit, right? When the movement went to ordain women, there was hundreds and hundreds of churches that said they were going to pull their support from the movement and stop giving their 3% or whatever it was if women could be ordained pastors. And it worked for a while. They didn't do it right away because like, well, what if we lose this money? Yeah. So then they approved it. And then when it came to queer people being recognized, it was the same thing. If you don't make a position paper and statement against it, we're leaving. And for whatever reason, that's the one that worked. They had people that were in support of it on the board. And the idea of money and power froze them. Because that's what money and power fucking does. It gives you access or intimidates or stalls people from doing. Violence does the same thing. Even if it's not to us, we feel it, and it puts us in fight or flight. And for me, right now, I'm in the flight. And so when you have power dynamics that know what they're doing, but guys damn, guys, we're just seeking the kingdom, am I right? He's got the wheel. I'm just going along for the ride. And it feels then, as someone who's in that church or in that movement or denomination, or even in that stream of Christianity or spirituality, it feels like, I don't have to do anything. They're giving me permission to not do something. They're giving me voice and language to focus on the gospel. And I didn't say this. It's also a way of using the idea of God and prayer and the Bible and the kingdom as a way of deferring responsibility. So if you take the radical middle, you don't even have to not take a side. You don't even have to do anything. Because you're saying, oh, God's got the wheel, God's in control, is this idea of that God can stop stuff.
And like, I felt a tingly, nice feeling during worship.
Exactly.
So like, it must be okay.
I'm okay, therefore the world's okay. We just need to trust Jesus. So it's Lisa Sharon Harper in her book, The Very Good Gospel. It's a fucking brilliant book, right? She talks on the very beginning of if not shalom, but what is good, tov, right? The Hebrew word of saying in Genesis 1 of like God saw what he created and it was good.
Sure.
She talks about the goodness is between us is when things are made right. And she tells a story of if I went to my great-great-great-great-grandma who was an enslaved woman whose life was to produce more enslaved people by birthing. She said, if I went and knocked on her door and she opened up and said, Grandma, I got the best news. Jesus Christ lived a perfect life and died for your sins and resurrected, and you too can have that same hope. And in the story, you should go and read it if you haven't. She talks about her grandma looking at her saying, what's so good about that if I'm still being raped, if I'm still enslaved? That doesn't sound like good news. So what evangelicals will call good news is inaction because it benefits them. Mm-hmm. And the clergy I see there making a fucking difference are out there on the streets and maybe protesting, but maybe handing out water, helping with tear gas, blowing whistles, because they know the good news, if it's not into like the soles of our shoes, if it's not in our bones and our blood and our scars, then fuck it. Then it's not good news for anyone.
Which is like...
And that's the kind of the Christianity I can get behind.
Yeah. And it's the bullshit of like kingdom theology, because it runs up exactly what you're saying, because in a nutshell, kingdom theology is like heaven will be ours one day and we can break it into the present because of Jesus and the Holy Spirit or whatever. But like all that really meant was you can feel good in a moment. That's the kingdom of God breaking through, is that you can feel that tingly, nice, pleasant calmness that you feel in a worship service, instead of, nonviolent action in Jesus up against the Roman Empire, or feeding thousands of people, or, whatever example from Jesus. None of that has anything to do with it. It's all about just like inaction and let's just feel good for a second. That's the kingdom of God. And maybe if some black people start coming to your church, and if they choose to stay and play ball on your terms, that's also the kingdom of God breaking through.
Exactly. Then even taking the kingdom of God theology also implies that there is a different kingdom, right? Which evangelicals, we at one point, right, said it was the kingdom of Satan.
Right.
And even that idea of the enemy is something else other than an administration or policies that are incredibly violent and harmful, then who are you going to be angry at? You're going to be angry at the devil, which is a convenient excuse, right? It's a convenient enemy because you can't do anything about it other than pray, other than repent, it's just a circular argument that rewards and breeds indifference.
Right.
And that benefits no one other than the leaders in that church, not even the people in that church, the leaders in that church.
So what we talked that, beforehand, what would our former selves as pastors in that denomination, what would have we said? Not what we hoped we'd say, not what we'd say now if we were in that position. Well, what do you think your public-facing self would have said? What message would you have delivered back then?
It would have been something. Do I have to do the voice too? Hey guys. It would have been. We're really scared. Violence is scary, but we can have hope. We have a cloud of witnesses, Hebrews 11, that's gone before us, who is informing us to stay the fight. Ephesians 6, the battle is not our own, it's a spiritual battle. Jesus has everything we need. We just have to seek Jesus.
That's it right there.
Would be
That right there is, I remember after George Floyd was murdered, a pastor in this movement gave a message, because I listened to it. I'm like, I wonder what they'd say right now. And I think you were probably in the room while I was listening to it on the internet, but it was like, things are so crazy right now. Everything's so nutso. And it's like kind of this like funny or trying to be funny.
I know exactly what you're talking about.
I know, well.
No, just by that voice.
I know you would. It was like, oh my God, have you seen the news? It's crazy. Like rip porn.
It's a stinking good book.
Yeah. But then it always just turned back to like, but if we seek Jesus, he will deliver something for us. Not actual wounds being mended or things being healed or chains being broken. Because it's like, it's not about any of that shit. It's not justice for George Floyd or anything. It was just about like, I don't know, probably just let's get us under control so that you keep coming here.
I got a great example that we haven't talked about before. When I worked in the evangelical church I did, there was, and I don't remember what prompted it, but Jake and Diana Ostrike, who are friends of ours, started, and he's a doctor and she's a nurse, and she's an activist. She's wonderful. But they started a free health clinic in the church. Were you there at this time, Dano? I don't think you were. Yeah. So they started a free health clinic. It was tons of people because there was a food shelf there, and so they're like, hey, if we're gonna take care of the body and they take care of the soul by offering prayer, things that are fine. They're like, we should have some access to help them if they need it. And so for like well over a year, maybe longer, they were offering, you can come in and get some basic check-in on your ears if you got a sore throat or just a very kind way to under-resource people. And I remember the day that they shut it down. And I'm like, and talking about it forever. Look how great we are. Look how the change we're doing. God is winning. Kingdom's advancing because we're taking care of marginalized people. But as soon as the insurance company got involved, shut it down.
I did not know
Why?
This.
Because we might lose our coverage or we could be held liable. Things that businesses have to do. But when you're benefiting from it, you're using the words of like, God is winning, kingdom coming, doing the Lord's work. It's bullshit because as soon as you lose something, you're gone. All of a sudden, it's not the Lord's work anymore.
Right.
Now, Satan got a hold of the insurance company and wrote this certain policy. Oh, fuck Satan, you got us there. It's only God when it's winning. And anything where you lose, even if it's by your own hands, you have some convenient way to blame it. So there's no agency. There's no personal responsibility in the kingdom of God under their eyes. It's just trust us, go where we're going. God's always winning. If God's before us, who can be against us? Turns out fucking a lot of people who need help are.
Right.
And we could do something about it.
I was in like a ministry school in this church that you were in, and we had to do a big project for outreach. And my project was like plan this event at Gave Away Lemonade or some stupid bullshit. And then our friend Jillian is like, I'm going to start a free health clinic. And I was like, oh shit. Jillian just won. Like I gave away lemonade for an hour in Canal Park. And she's like, 50 people got diagnosed with diabetes and are now getting treatment. I'm like, okay.
That's so good. But even that language though is so evangelical.
Yeah.
I guess they won and I lost because everything, at least, and even in larger churches like mega churches or whatever you call them, it's all competition based. If people could be in the back rooms, the staff lounge or whatever you want to call it, those meetings, it is all trying to compete and win at the expense of other people.
Yeah.
Other churches, other staff members, other programs. It's so going back to where we started of like former versions of ourselves, and I see it I see a lot of places in Duluth. I see a lot online with what's happening with Renee Good right now. So why don't we take a quick break, and then when we come back, let's wrap it up the pod with where do we find grounding in hope as you and I as individuals, and then maybe even, I mean, I can speak to what could the church or spirituality or faith or a community bring some sort of purpose and hope that looks differently than former versions of ourselves. Mm-hmm. That sound good?
Yeah.
Shit, my pastor said, oh, it's getting wild.
All right, we're back from break. And Dano, I apologize. I said, we're going to talk about something completely different. And I forgot to ask you, like, how would former version of Dano, evangelical pastor, super pastor Dano, what do you imagine you would have said if you were still in that system now?
Well, I think started with church announcements. I still would have delivered.
Did you hear that Santa? Did you hear Santa started a church?
Santa? Oh, he did an announcement.
Yeah,
He's
okay.
Christian now.
Oh, that's good.
A lot of people have been asking for more Santa content. We hear you. And Santa will return in the new year.
Good.
I think back then, I think we would have said more than other evangelical churches. I think the church I was a part of was kind of like the up and coming generation of this denomination. You know what I mean? Like, this church and a few other churches like this, they're the next generation of what our church movement will be. And we took a lot of pride in that. And I think because of the demographics of our leadership team and some values there, I think we would have spoke to racism. They often talked about racism, which felt really good. And I think probably was good. I mean, they were thoughtful. They had a stake in this. And so they would speak up about white privilege. I think it ruffled feathers within the denomination of like, they talk about this too much. It's not the main in the plane, quote unquote. And they would always make the case of like, if this isn't something we're supposed to talk about, then what are we doing here? What I think would have broke down for a former self for me, I feel like I often ran up against like, great, we're talking about this. What now? What are we going to go do now? Do we join the protests? And I think oftentimes that conversation quickly fizzled out. Because I think making relationships in the community was hard. I think for a lot of people in our church, they were parents of a young family. So I think like, oh, well, church is over and the protest isn't going to happen until 8:00 tonight. Like, we'll see you Wednesday, we'll see you at the next service. And I feel that now. Truly, as a parent of a young kid, it's like, well, geez, man, how am I supposed to go do that? I gotta be here. And so I think like, I'm not trying to dunk on my old pastors. So I think the thing that I would have said back then, unfortunately, would have been pointing it more towards Jesus with a little bit of activism mixed in. Mm-hmm. And a little bit of, we'd highlight other organizations, but we wouldn't really do anything ourselves. Mm-hmm. And I think that's embarrassing to me because I think we all I really wanted to be like a revolutionary, front lines person. And I had agency and I could have went and did that. And we're doing a hypothetical, I guess. But I think I did buy into like, well, Martin Luther King fucking did the march, man. And he like was on the front lines and we hold him up as a hero. And we did in that church. I just think like the organization that we were part of, there was nothing to those words beyond feel good and feel fuzzy and feel like you're different. And maybe post, like when Ferguson, Missouri, Michael Brown, I would post up on Facebook and that felt like something, but it wasn't shit and it wasn't enough. And it maybe just ruffled some feathers, which sure is something, but it's not what I think. It's not what I think the church should be, even though I'm not a part of the church right now.
Yeah, it's okay.
And so I'm curious, like, if it all just comes down to privilege and, whiteness and the things you just talked about, like, where's the breakdown of that, like, spirit in the church, not spirit, attitude in the church, movement in the church, where it just, most churches won't talk about this. The ones that do will talk about it and gain some press. But what does that actually accomplish until there's movement? Because I respect a lot more. I think he's Episcopalian, the dude that got shot in the head with a pepper bullet, that priest who keeps showing up, compared to just like a pastor that maybe is ruffling some feathers in his latest sermon by just addressing this thing that's happening in the world.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think that's probably what I would have done. I would have said some things more than most people, more than most of my peers, but it wouldn't have led to anything, and that's not something I'm proud of.
So let's talk on, not on shaming you. We can if you want, but let's talk on like what you said. Then, if the Spirit is moving, I actually really like that word. It can be triggering as well, but like where if it's the church or it's the community or it's a family system or a group of friends, what things can we do practically that could bring change, hope, and belonging? Because I think evangelicals did a really good job at like belonging. It was just, so toxic and guised in spirituality and patriarchy. So if we're going to shift, we're no longer in those systems. What are things we could do, or we are doing, that might help? And even that word is elusive, right? Help what, help who, help how. But let's leave it open. What things have you done in the last couple? It's only been a week, yeah, right. It's only been a week. What things have you done, Dano, in the past week that you found some grounding and hope, not just for yourself, but maybe for your community?
I think just in general, giving money really does work. You know what I mean? Like, as simple of an act as that is, I think that is something that all of us can do that has a little extra money, just to give to an organization that we might trust or know someone that trusts it. And it's easy, right? I mean, like, it doesn't really take showing up, but it is hugely effective. So we've done that, checking in with people that we know that might be feeling more of stress than we feel about this.
Huge.
Different friends, different neighbors. I want to continue to do that. I think we'll put in the show notes and on the social media stuff organizations that people can give to and different ways to help. But one thing I did, my wife went to like a little press conference protest by the Department of Education or some education group, and it was very funny. She's like, it was probably the whitest thing I've ever been to in my life, and that says a lot.
It was like a Dave Matthews concert.
No, I mean, it was like a Lutheran, like, okay, let's all quietly say some chants and then go home. But, she showed up. That's good. I went to that big one in Minneapolis this last weekend. So it was probably, 4 days after Renee Good was murdered. And it was crazy. I was listening to a protest band called Kneecap. I sent you the song.
Yeah.
It truly gets me like fired up. Check it out. Hood, Hood by Kneecap. They're like this Irish protest band that anyways, they're awesome.
They're the new Rage Against the Machine.
They're the new Rage
This
Against the
generation,
Machine, baby.
yeah.
And that's what Tom Morello coined them as. So anyway, so I'm there. I'm going to this thing. It's in South Minneapolis. If you know South Minneapolis, there's like some, major streets that are kind of the thoroughfares. So I'm going down Portland Avenue, not really thinking about where it happened. I was just trying to think about, okay, I got to get to Powderhorn Park and I got to get parking. And then all of a sudden I realized I'm a block away from where Renee Brown was shot. Or not Renee Brown, Renee Good. And I just goosebumps and just started crying because all of a sudden I'm seeing this memorial there. It's like, holy shit, it's just right here. And then I keep going because there's all this traffic, and then I eventually take a left to try to go, east to get a parking spot. And then all of a sudden I'm in George Floyd Square because it's only like 6 blocks from that. And again, it was just goosebumps and just feeling this like stress and anxiety and just whatever, trauma response and just like wanting to scream. And then I finally park and I walk. And the first thing I felt is just moving with this huge amount of people, everybody that parked, all going towards this big, kind of Central Park type park called Powderhorn. And then just hearing the music, hearing the drums, smelling the food of people making. I enter the park, and the first thing I see is this big pickup truck with probably 15 dudes, all like Latino guys holding a big Mexican flag, and they're handing out free coffee and free pizza. And I was just like, geez, dude. Like, and they're thanking me for showing up to this. And it's like, I almost wanted to be like, dude, like, get the fuck out of here. Go hide. Like, what are you doing? And they put their feet on the ground, you know? I mean, to our point. Like, anyways, and then this protest was like more people than I think I've ever been gathered that I've seen that outside of a concert or a sporting event in Minnesota. Thousands and thousands of people singing songs. Everybody has like witty signs. People are crying and hugging. And it was the closest thing that I felt to a church in a long, long time of just like, there's a movement here and there's a sense of grief, of joy, of expression, of hope, and anger. And yeah, it was, I didn't expect it to be as like therapeutic as it was. It just felt like, okay, like this isn't just empty words. This isn't just, hey, let's just pray or let's just focus on Jesus and invite the Holy Spirit and let your kingdom come. It was like, no, this is like way more than that. Yeah. And way more practical and way more hopeful than that could ever be, because I'm seeing it in action in people of all, you know, varieties. And it was amazing.
I agree with you. And the word, that, at least for me, is I see not just people in action. I'm like, oh, these are people who really believe it. They embody this. Because I'm still cynical of pastors, and I am one. I'm in the industry of like, oh yeah, we're a social justice church. And it's like, okay, put that on your website and then don't do anything about it. So when I see people who are actually doing the fucking work, it's like, oh, there's people who are actually believing that we can make the world a better place, and they can be clergy, and they don't have to be, but they're doing the shit. And to me, that's one of the most inspiring things is like just being around people like, oh, I'm not alone. And alone is not just there's other people doing work. It's like I'm not the only one who's feeling this. Like there's times I'm like, am I overreacting? And I say overreacting of like my like we were talking earlier of I feel guilty that I don't feel guilty enough at times. And then I feel guilty that I'm not doing enough. And I should on myself. I should be doing this. I should. And so when I'm around, when I'm at a rally or a vigil or a protest, it feels like, oh, this is how we should be spending our energy. Or this is a great place to, not the only place, but this is a great place to spend our energy because it feels like we're going to do something. I get to be a part of something instead of, I do think praying and reciting poetry or scripture and silence and singing is incredibly powerful. But if it's only powerful just to not do anything with, then it's just like what the Bible says, these are just empty prayers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there was something to like showing up to see other people like putting themselves in a place where they could be arrested, even if they were following the law. Like, I just mean like, you're not just in a room somewhere. It's like, you're a part of the movement. Like, you could be identified as someone that was at a protest, you know? And that could be used, like, even that little step, just feel like, okay, there's something about like boots on the ground here of
it's a risk.
Showing up to march. Yeah.
Oh my God. Do you remember John Wimber's whole thing of how do you spell faith?
Yeah, I do.
R-I-S-K, right? And it's true. The reason I mock it is because what it led to was the same bullshit over and over and over again.
Yeah.
So for me, we had a service on Sunday, and I was numb. I mean, I was numb for a while, and I'm like, and I'm not drinking anymore, right? So it was like, I don't know what to do. And I felt like, I should come up with this message and blah, 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 blah. And it was like, why? We don't need more. I'm a big fan of my voice, right? I'm like, I don't think I need what could I say? I could say some shit, and it could be good. So instead, we sang a couple songs, and we did an open mic. If you've ever been a part of an open mic at church, it can either be like the best thing in the whole entire world, or it can be the most awkward. We could talk about that at a different time. The funny stories. We're a small church, so we can have an open mic. And I thought, like, if we had like 400 people, we couldn't do an open mic. I'd have to just ask people to share, right? Which is still me curating what kind of experience do I want people to have. And what people shared, it was so fucking powerful because it was fear. There wasn't a lot of hope. I don't even know if anyone shared that they have hope. It was all, I'm scared. One person shared on that their family, he's Japanese American, and shared about his family. We're part of the intermittent camps. And he's read stories about them, right? Like, he has diary entries of what they were writing, what they were saying, and said, what do we do? What does my family do? My ancestors do? Oh, and then a mom got up and shared, she's got little kids, and said, Renee did everything that patriarchy has taught women to do. Smile, make eye contact, affirm them, and she just said, and it didn't fucking work. So what am I supposed to tell my daughters if it doesn't work? What are we supposed to tell these daughters to do with men now? The gospel was preached, right? And the gospel that was preached was not just trust in Jesus. It's a mess. It's fucking feels impossible and it feels scary. And let's name what we feel, because that's what sacredness is, to give language to things that are present. And it was one of the most holy things that we could have done. And I left feeling like, well, we didn't really make a big difference. And we need places to be honest and vulnerable. And not everyone has those places. And so if neighborhood church can be one of those places where for 45 minutes we cry and there's awkward silences and people take a long time to walk up. We had people who've never been to our church get up and share before.
Wow, that's cool.
And it's cool. I'm not saying this to compliment myself. What I'm saying is, where we can find hope is where we can just be honest and vulnerable and raw. Not end there. That would just be the same thing of the radical middle, right? If we say things just so that we feel better, instead of can we collectively say things to give voice and purpose and reasoning and believability and inclusion so people feel like they're not alone, so that we can go do things knowing we're not alone, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So when I think of
go ahead.
Just quickly, when I think about moving forward, what can I do in my profession as a pastor, as a clergy member, and what I can do as a father and as a friend, as a brother, as a son, as a community member in a neighborhood, is I think we can be honest and vulnerable and then encourage. Like, hey, what do we want to do today? Like for Nikki and I, my wife and I, we were like, well, there's this vigil. Do you want to go? Because we both couldn't go. And so, like, how do you help people give permission? How do you inform? I love when people say, hey, this is happening, where I feel like I'm invited into something. Because there's so much content. There's so much shit out there right now, right? Of like, how do we even choose what to do? The point is any practice where we can find grounding, voice, and community is so important right now. But then using that, then how do we continue to invite others so that it's not just me and my two buddies doing it over and over and over again? Does that make sense?
Right. Mm-hmm.
So it has to go beyond just ourselves, and it has to be places where we can be vulnerable and honest. And then, Dano, I'd like to hear what you have to say. Is the people that I'm trusting and who I'm following and I'm believing are people who have the scars and the receipts, people who have done it before, right? So I have a friend. I have someone that I've interacted with a couple times who's a pastor down in, and a professor, no, not a pastor, he's a professor down in Texas. And the content that they're putting out is just fucking so incredibly good. So I'm choosing to listen and follow people that maybe aren't the sexiest people out there, but they're doing the fucking work. And that's who I want to give my energy and money to.
I think what you said about like that mom, like, what do I tell my kids? I think it's strangely where I still draw upon like Jesus. I don't say Jesus to them necessarily, but just like, look out for the least of look out for the most vulnerable people. Like those are the people, even like day to day with them being in elementary school, just like, oh, this person like has a hard time behaving in class and often gets like upset easily. Most likely they have stuff going on. Be the nicest to them. You know what I mean? Like help them whenever they need help, even if it's hard to pay attention because, this kid just whatever has some behavioral issues or whatever. It's like, okay, well, clearly there's maybe some developmental things or maybe something in their family or their home life. All to say, that's what I still like think about when I have to tell them, who needs our help? What do we do? Well, let's start with like who needs it the most, or like the people that aren't the ones with the microphones or the body armor or the guns or whatever. Like, how about our neighbors over there that we kind of know that are probably really scared right now? How can we help them? The tricky thing about that is kind of what I just said is, and this is a whole big other subject, but just like, what do you tell your kids about law enforcement? What do you tell? And we did this with like George Floyd, just like that's a very sticky conversation to have of like, like I learned this from African-American friends of mine, just like, it's not a guarantee that you just trust cops.
Yeah.
It's easier for me. But let's just say ICE agents in this thing. Like, I'm not going to tell my kids, whatever. I don't even know.
Exactly.
They're 10.
It's messy. Yeah.
It's messy. But yeah, I'm not really sure. I think what you said, like find your people, show up for things, be vulnerable.
Hold on, Dan. Let's go back to the parent thing, because I do think that's important. There's that, and I feel, and my kids are 20, 17, and 14, right? So very different, but it's how do we pass along things that we wish we would have known at that age, right? Like, I wish there was more conversations in our church, in our youth group, and in our home about what justice and inclusion could look like. And there were, right? But I wish there was more. And at the same time, you can only answer the questions your kids are asking. So there's what we know and what they need to know might not always jive up, but there still has to be those conversations like things aren't okay. And it's scary. It's so fucking complicated, but what I feel, again, going back to radical middle, is that what so many white families do is we just don't talk about it. Because I don't feel I have the answer. I don't know how to save you from this or protect you from this. So let's just don't do anything because we win when we don't do anything. So if I could encourage, and I am no fucking expert in this, but if I encourage anyone with kids and talking about what's happening is just be honest. You don't have to go into all the details. We don't have to scare them, but we can be honest if things are not okay because they feel it. They feel it because we feel it. So we're not getting into a parenting podcast, but I think where we do harm is when we just shut down and we pretend like nothing's happening because our homes are safe, or we pretend our homes are safe.
Right.
I think what we can do is just say, I don't fucking know, but I feel. I don't know I don't know the answer, but I know what we're doing is not right. This is not okay. So
yeah, I think that's been valuable for me is like, and my wife, like I'm not like if a news breaks or something, and like I start crying, like I don't run off to a different room so my kids don't see.
Exactly.
And that might sound like easy for some, but like that is, I don't know, as cliche as it is. I don't know I think I saw my dad cry at my grandpa's funeral, and that was about it. And no shame on him, but I just mean like it wasn't a thing. The only emotions you show are happiness and anger, not overwhelmed, hopelessness. Like,
Are we going to be okay? Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, that's about it.
Okay. So that is a the last 2 episodes should be different because I don't want to be in a happy slappy right. And so I hope that I do have hope. I have hope that there's going to be. No, I'm lying. I don't have a lot of hope right now. There's going to be change. I don't know. But here I can say what I do know. I do know. I believe that love, Ryan Bowers, right? I believe love wins. I really fucking do. And my only hope is not in things are going to change, a new administration. Sure, I don't know. But what I can hold on to is the rawness and the sacredness of that mom saying, what am I going to tell my kids? I can be present with that. And the more that we can be aware of our neighbors, our family, and our friends, and marginalized, vulnerable people especially. I love what you said, like text people, check in on people that have histories of trauma and violence. I had someone do that with me, and it felt, I could cry. A simple text made me feel so fucking like alive. Not good, just made me feel like, oh, okay, I'm a human. Someone knows that of my trauma. So,
Yeah.
the more we can be human and love to one another, I think is the best thing we can do.
Yeah. I was going to also say, all that's really good and true. And then there's a part of me that's also like, whatever. Like,
What?
maybe I need to prepare myself to go to jail. Like, I don't want to lose that fight either. You know what I mean? Like, hey, maybe it is like getting in the face at some point. I don't know if it's going to get there, or maybe it's already there, but I want to also like be prepared to be like, you got to go through me to get to my neighbor. You know what I mean?
A thousand
Which is scary
percent.
as shit.
It's scary as shit, but I would say from listening to other wiser people than myself who said that has to be on the table. But what white people do is we feel like we go to the extreme scenario because we think, then I have a voice, then my body has a purpose, then I matter.
Right.
And what I've heard from other activists and other marginalized people, they're saying, can you just fucking show up? Can you not be the first in line to get the pizza? But can you still show up? Can you not always be on the microphone?
There's an ocean between being William Wallace and just being someone there to like,
Dude,
fucking sweep the floor before people get there or whatever.
Dan, honestly, it's so funny you said that. It's the first thing I thought of when we were talking about this podcast. I'm like, oh, how do we have like a brave... We're such middle-aged white men that grew up in the 90s.
I know, I'm like,
how do we be a Braveheart? It's like, we don't need to be Braveheart. Maybe we will, but that's not... The question is, how do we just start by being, are we fucking awake to what's happening? So,
Right.
All right. Well,
All right, folks.
We never said this on the podcast, Dano, but I love you.
I love you, Kris.
Yeah. So, no, I'm being serious. I think there's power.
I am too.
Yeah. So, thanks for listening, everyone.